You've most likely watched the video on the screen and seen the massive amounts of hate surrounding it. Most people are focusing on the other, more loud parts of it, but today I want to thoroughly discuss the most obvious issue that doesn't even exist: the Genshin Villain Problem. So what is a villain? What characters even fall under this category? Well, let's define every category a Genshin character can fall under. We have the hero, who makes the right choice for all of the right reasons. The star of the world, right? They aren't morally ambiguous in any way. They are always aiding others for this purpose of just helping. We have the anti-hero, who makes the right choice just like the hero, but typically for the wrong reasons like revenge or personal gain. The anti-villain is someone who makes the wrong choice, but for all of the right reasons. They actually believe that they're saving the world, or correcting an injustice, or protecting those around them. And then, of course, we have the villain. Somebody who makes the wrong choice for all of the wrong reasons. Someone who is serving a bad purpose only for the reasons like the anti-hero, for revenge and personal gain. Here I have sorted most playable characters plus a few very big names. Note that I'm using Lumine as Traveler and Aether as a sibling, just because that is what I use for the game, but obviously they can be swapped. Many of these characters also fit in between two categories, or they're in several, or it can be debated. This is just basically what I went off of. Feel free to correct me in the comments if you'd like. A few of the really notable ones that we're looking at here is the fact that we only have 2 actual full-on villains, while a lot of these other characters that we think are villains actually fall in the anti-villain category. Most of the Genshin characters are heroes. It's a video game, that's expected, while we do have quite a few in the anti-hero category as well. Just to give a big example about where these categories actually stand before we start getting into the real root of the problem, I'll be using the following characters as my examples. That's going to be Dottore, Tartaglia, Diluc, and Nahida. Dottore is our big name villain. His list of crimes include psychological abuse, corruption, abuse of power, attempted world domination, usurpation, attempted deicide, mass murders. Well, obviously he's a villain. At every turn, he is making a harmful decision for his own personal goals and gain. There is nothing he could have done that would have redeemed himself. Next we have our anti-villain, the most infamous toy seller in all of Teyvat, Tartaglia. His list of crimes is long, obviously, but not like Dottore, just still notable.
I'm not a bad guy. Oh, okay, perhaps I'm kind of a bad guy.
What makes him an anti-villain, though, is that his loyalty is with his loved ones and his comrades, not an ideology. He is morally ambiguous. He seeks thrill through battle, while still respecting his allies. He dislikes harming innocent people unless it's absolutely necessary, and he is devoted to protecting his family. He isn't an entirely evil force, he just does everything for the sake of his family, including following the Fatui and following the Tsaritsa. He actually believes he is doing the right thing, and that is what makes him an anti-villain, not an anti-hero, or in any other category for that matter. Then we have what is essentially Batman. Diluc has exterminated Fatui, caused major destruction to several strongholds across Teyvat, and he does it in a goal to protect the people of Mondstadt after his father's past with the delusion and whatnot. I'm not gonna really go ahead and spoil everything here. You may have a different opinion depending on how you have perceived the game. This one is kind of a toss-up. However, Diluc and Kaya are both self-proclaimed anti-heroes, and they do fit the bill to be in the category. So that is why I am using him as an example here. If you really disagree with this spot, just think of Rosaria. She's also a really great example for what an anti-hero is as well. And then our shiny gold star, Nahida, our hero. She doesn't make any morally gray decisions, and she's always working to restore the balance and prosperity to Sumeru. She faces her own struggles, but consistently works to be a better active leader and is entirely selfless. With these examples set, we should start talking about what's actually physically stopping Genshin from making Dottore playable while letting Tartaglia be. Amongst the list of fun facts about Genshin behind me, you may see a couple of interesting things, but the biggest thing here is that Genshin is actually developed by a Chinese studio. I know many players don't actually know about that or forget about it, but I know it is especially strong in my fellow American players, alright? It's something we don't really think about all the time, but this has a really big impact, actually, on the kind of gameplay that we're able to get. Games made in China must follow very strict rules and guidelines. In patch 2.4, we see travelers were gifted skins for Jean, Amber, Mona, and Rosaria, while players in China had gained them as permanent replacements due to regulations. If you try to type Taiwan or Hong Kong in the Genshin chat, you will be censored in-game. While there are not explicit laws regarding the villain problem we're talking about, the Chinese National Radio and Television Administration enforces broad content review rules. This requires games to reflect the state's correct values, including but not limited to unity, social harmony, and respect for the law. Games are expected to highlight positive societal behavior and reinforce moral education compliant with state principles. It's difficult as is for Genshin to get away with the moral ambiguity that we get in a lot of the characters we're playing. All of the harbingers that we're able to play are basically classified as anti-villains with the exception of Columbina. It's very difficult for us already to have access to those characters, and to ask for access to an actual villain is near impossible. So, is it actually a Genshin Villain Problem? No, it's compliance. And here's the pattern that makes it incredibly obvious. Scaramouche, now the Wanderer, or whatever you named him in your Genshin, was introduced as a harbinger out for blood, focused on his own personal goals. He perfectly fit the bill of a villain. Obviously, he wasn't as bad as Dottore, but he was doing all the wrong things for his own personal gain and reasons. And revenge. He erased himself from Irminsul later down the line, though, after learning the truth behind Tatarasana. This symbolized self-acceptance of his past in order to protect new friends and allies that he had found, like the Traveler, Nahida, etc. Sumeru Archon Quest was actually goated. If you haven't done it yet, please get to it. This is why he is playable, though. It's because his redemption showed him attempting and still working to, even in recent Archon quests, to correct the actions of his past. I know a lot of people had a lot of things to say about Scaramouche becoming playable and thinking that every Harbinger released after him would become playable, but if the Harbingers don't follow the same steps as him, they cannot become playable. We also see this with another character that we have access to now as well that isn't a Harbinger. This would be the Raiden Shogun puppet. She enabled the Vision Hunt degree, which caused a large-scale civil war across Inazuma in hopes to preserve eternity. She was described as committing barbaric crime against humanity, yet she is now playable. Why? Because she is framed as regretful, taking responsibility and working toward a more forward-thinking governance after everything that has happened. The fact many players feel she was forgiven too easily and the Civil War's effects are too damning to be ignored only proved my point further. She had to be redeemed to become playable, even if the redemption didn't feel earned. So what kind of characters can we expect to be playable in the future? Well, let's talk about Asmodee. Because I see this all the time on Twitter and Reddit and TikTok, and I think this is actually a really interesting thing to talk about, given the pattern that we've already proved through Scaramouche, Raiden. You can also take Arlecchino and Sandrone, and basically any other Harbinger in the game. Asmodee is the sustainer of the heavenly principles. She's being framed by the game as the story progresses as someone upholding a system rather than someone who is being a villain for the sake of being evil. Just like the Harbingers enforce the Tsaritsa's will, Asmodee enforces the heavenly principles. The game consistently frames antagonists as people following orders or upholding a system rather than being inherently evil or flawed. This is the loophole that allows for playable anti-villain. The character isn't bad, the system they follow is flawed, and they can be redeemed because of that. So, Asmodee could be playable in the future with a redemption arc, and it would make sense, and it would fit this pattern. But Dottore? No. He cannot be redeemed, even if he comes back to life again.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Who invited this man?
We can also keep this pattern in mind when talking about a lot of the other characters that we are hoping for. I know a lot of people are talking about wanting Piero to be playable at some point, which could happen because he's just upholding a system. But at the same time, we don't really know too much about him and what he's actually doing. He could be like Dottore and it's an entire thing. Anyways, the original creator spent 4 minutes on this topic without questioning why. Instead, we have her quote this Reddit comment that they're allergic to morally gray, irredeemable, or just bad characters because they don't know how to write anything that isn't a shitty isekai where the MC wins using the power of friendship in his harem. This is just a massive oversight, and it completely ignores the law that applies to this game amongst many other Hoyo games. Guys, it isn't a Genshin problem, it's not even a Hoyo problem, it's a regulatory framework that applies to every game that is made in China. Genshin has been highlighted by Devin Thorne, an analyst specializing in the CCP, as having propaganda value while not being direct propaganda. Genshin transmits Chinese culture overseas in a fun way, and because of this, it only makes sense that Hoyoverse will be especially careful to comply with regulations. So what do we do the next time someone brings up this non-existent problem? Well, we ask why they would actually think that this pattern exists. If we dig into regulations and precedent, we find that it isn't lazy writing, it's a game developer navigating a legal system that doesn't allow playable villains to remain evil. The fact that we have our group of anti-villains available shows that the system isn't totalitarian, but there are red lines, and Hoyoverse knows exactly where they are. And on that note, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a comment if you want to discuss anything. I'll be answering any questions or anybody who wants to debate, obviously in a respectful manner. And there should be no hate going towards this original creator. There's no reason that we should be sending someone death threats over a video game. We can educate people who are ignorant without being assholes about it. So just please be respectful to one another. And I will see you in the comments or in the next video. Bye!